Welcome to Supercool, the show about real-world climate solutions that cut carbon, boost the bottom line, and improve modern life. Each week on Supercool, we go behind the headlines to pinpoint the stories and data accelerating the low-carbon economy in towns and cities across the U.S. and around the globe. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. If you're enjoying the show, give us a follow or subscribe wherever you listen, and please leave us a review to help more folks discover Supercool. What's the biggest lesson a legion of professionals learned after spending the past 15 years building energy efficiency programs, demand response systems, and new ways for utilities to work with homeowners to save money, stabilize the grid, lower energy prices, and avoid building new fossil fuel infrastructure? The lesson is this. When it comes to energy, it's actually really hard to get people's attention. Our guest today knows as much about that as anyone on the planet. Jeff Gleeson is Chief Product Officer at Renew Home, a company formed in 2024 by merging two home energy management powerhouses, Google's Nest Renew and Ohm Connect, with a sprinkling of top minds from O-Power, utilities, and climate tech startups across the country. These are self-professed energy nerds. They love energy, but for Jeff, it took him years to internalize something critical. It's okay if everyday Americans don't feel the same way. And once he and his colleagues accepted that truth, the path forward became crystal clear. Today, we're returning to a topic that keeps popping up on the show, virtual power plants. It's a name nobody particularly likes, but a concept that's vital to the clean energy transition, the future of the power grid, and the overall low carbon future. The reason is that energy demand is spiking. As temperatures rise and weather becomes more extreme, demand for heating and cooling is going up. AI and data center energy needs are enormous, and the electrification of everything, cars and homes, also creates more grid energy requirements. As Grid Strategies, a highly respected consultancy, laid out in two reports over the past 2 years, the era of flat energy demand is over. Forecasts now project U.S. demand to rise by 16% over the next 5 years. That's an enormous amount. So you can do two things: build more power generation or curtail demand. But how do you curtail demand without disrupting lives? That's where virtual power plants come in. By weaving together the energy flexibility of hundreds of thousands or even millions of homes, companies like Renew Home can reduce demand instantly when the grid is stressed. That frees up electricity, keeps the grid stable, and prevents utilities from firing up fossil fuel peaker plants that spike emissions and drive up costs for everyone. There are two keys to making virtual power plants actually work. One, you have to get all the devices that manage or generate energy, like smart thermostats, hot water heaters, EV chargers, and solar systems, onboarded into the programs. And two, you have to speak to homeowners in language they understand, like savings and rewards, not these dense word salads of industry jargon. Renew Home excels at both, and they're already rolling out virtual power plants across the country. This is a business opportunity that a lot of big players are chasing. We've talked to Dan Lotano, COO of GoodLeap, about how they're using solar and battery financing to build the front end of their virtual power plant strategy. We've also talked to Mary Powell, CEO of Sunrun, the first home solar company to surpass 1 million customers, and now the US leader in battery installations for homes. Sunrun is turning that customer base into virtual power plant infrastructure too. And we've got more coming up in future episodes, like Palmetto and its founder and CEO, Chris Kemper, who's also building a home energy platform for the future. But Renew Home may be the best positioned pure play virtual power plant company out there. They know how to get homeowners signed up and engaged. They know how to talk to customers and when to talk to customers in ways that resonate. And they have deep relationships and a track record with utilities to get these programs off the ground and delivering real results. Here's what's super cool. Anyone today can start participating in a Renew Home virtual power plant for the $129 cost of a Nest thermostat. One more point before we dive in. Renew Home doesn't make or sell the thermostat or the hot water heater or the battery. They're not a hardware company. Instead, Renew Home is the software layer, the intelligence that sits inside those devices, connecting your home to the grid and helping you earn rewards while staying comfortable. Here's my conversation with Jeff. Jeff, welcome to Supercool.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
We have been talking either directly or in and around virtual power plants on our show, off and on now, probably for a couple of months. And we're talking to more and more companies working in energy and buildings. All roads kind of seem to lead to this conversation around virtual power plants. I was particularly excited to talk to you because the DNA of Renew Home, its roots, its heritage, it's sort of like the granddaddy of them all in a certain respect of how long you all have been at this and doing it and now have come together, coalesced as Renew Home. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what Renew Home is, and how it did come together. What are the roots behind this company?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the company roots and I'll sprinkle in some of mine too, because I'm going to bring it back even further than that, which actually will be relevant as we talk about the reason that customer engagement is so important here. Renew Home officially launched as a company right around a year ago, so April of 2024, on a mission to help households better manage their energy use, easier ways to save, easier ways to earn rewards back from the grid, just make it easier to use energy in a sort of smart and helpful way. And as a result, across millions of homes have an impact. We've got folks from Google Nest, from O-Power, from OhmConnect, and from various utilities across the US. So lots of expertise on the team too, which means we have really nerdy meetings. And so we partner with device manufacturers to bring intelligent energy features just directly into device experiences to help people save and unlock rewards and all those kinds of things. We'll talk a lot about that. We've got partners like Google Nest and Ream helping to bring smarter energy services and features around the home together. And now excited to continue partnering with folks across the energy landscape, like energy providers, utilities, DERMS partners, lots of folks that can help bring different services to life with us. Some of my roots, though, we always say, oh, yeah, we've got people here from Google Nest and O-Power and OhmConnect and various utilities. There are actually a couple folks on the team, myself included, that met at a utility company when we started our careers, just coming right out of the Great Recession. And we were focused on energy efficiency programs, demand response programs, time of use programs. And so really just getting started before we called all these things virtual power plants. And so some of us have been at this together now for 16 plus years.
Blazoned across your site, or if you go to renewhome.com, you position this as building the largest sustainable power plant on the grid. And so, yes, there's so much to get into. The way that this technology or these suites of technologies get talked about now, connecting homes or other buildings, but in this case, we're talking about homes to the grid and making that kind of a two-way relationship and saying, well, what's in it for homeowners? What's in it for the intermediaries? What's in it for the grid? Has kind of gotten wrapped up in this term, virtual power plant, which doesn't feel like the most consumer-facing of terms to completely understand. So I like this language of we're building the most sustainable power plant on the grid, but just give me a little more color on the core offering.
It's a really good question, and you're keying in on a theme that we'll touch on a few times, which is the industry is great at making terms that customers don't like and that customers don't understand. That's unhelpful. So we'll talk about how we deal with that as we bring different features to customers over time. Really, our mission is to start with savings. There are so many opportunities throughout a given day, depending on where you live, depending on the weather, depending on how your home kind of breathes in terms of temperature drift throughout the day, whether you have southern exposure in different windows and insulation in different parts of the home. All these things come together to make it possible to find savings all throughout the day. But we're busy people. We don't have time to think about that. But now Renew Home's goal is to bring features to devices that can do that so that you don't have to deal with all that complexity, so that you as a customer can lower your costs, earn some rewards. And then if we can do that across millions of homes, we've actually added up a big impact for the grid as well. And so I think helping people save and home energy management as a concept is probably the more helpful way to talk about it than virtual power plant, which nobody understands. And so we do try to avoid it when possible.
So home energy management, helping homeowners save. What does that then mean for Renew Home? When I say the granddaddy of them all, you have these roots connected to Google Nest. Now, Google Nest is not part of Renew Home, but half the company came from the Google world where Google Nest lives. And that smart thermostat, in my recollection of this industry, when it came out, now it has to be over, I'm thinking a decade ago, was like probably more than that.
Yeah, about 15 15 years, yeah.
15. Okay, so 15 years ago, it was like, well, there's this smart thermostat. It's going to save you money. It's going to do the work itself. It's going to learn your behavior. Okay, so there's some intelligence in that device. But it sounds like what Renew Home is doing is saying, yeah, there's intelligence in that device. We can put more intelligence in that device than it learns your behavior in your house and adjusts itself. We're going to connect it to the grid. That's going to create some savings. We're going to look at things you're talking about, like angle of the sun. What's the wind outside? Let's understand your personal home, your conditions, and we're going to create some more unlock and value here. It sounds like what you're doing when you say we're going to become this virtual power plant company, you're designing or you're developing a suite of technologies that are going into devices like that Google Nest thermostat, other types of devices too. Can you start to walk us through what does this mean? How does a homeowner start to engage with a new home? Or is it with a device? Walk us through this kind of product path and what it means for a consumer and how you develop your suite of products.
This hits on a key theme for us around personalization, making sure exactly as you described, all these inputs come together to help people save throughout the day based on all of these different aspects of a home and of the grid around you and your energy rate and all those things, which I can get into. To really tackle that question, it starts with making it simple and bringing all of these pieces together. It was a couple episodes ago, I think you talked with Jess Bergman. A few of us worked with her at Google. She and I actually started in the same kind of early days of energy efficiency, demand response, and all that stuff, trying to help people find these programs. What we learned was there's tons of people out there who are building these great energy efficiency programs, rebates that you can take advantage of as a homeowner, demand response programs that you can enroll in and earn money back. And they're pretty fabulous, but they're very hard to find. And what we learned back then was it's just really hard to get people's attention. And it's really hard to interrupt their busy day and say, hey, I've got this energy efficiency program or this demand response program that I'd love for you to participate in. It's good for you. It's good for the grid. Let's all jump in. It's just hard to get people to pay attention to energy is what we learned. What we arrived at over time was it really needs to be contextual. It needs to be valuable, and it needs to show up at the right time when it makes sense for a particular customer. So if you just sort of take to be true that everybody's very busy, and unfortunately for me, this actually took me a little while to internalize. People don't love energy as much as I love energy. So they don't think about it very often. Fine. But think about it when it matters. And so as an example, it sounds simple and it sounds obvious, but actually took a little while to arrive to. If you're trying to bring helpful energy savings features to customers, it should be right when you're setting up a device that can do that for you. And so to your question around how homeowners interact with this, we like to let people turn these smart features on in that really helpful moment. My favorite example is you're setting up a thermostat. You'll see the ability to turn on some of these smart features as you're going through that setup process. Turn on the ones that make sense for you. Don't turn on the ones that don't make sense for you. And then I would love for people to say, oh, now I'm going to pay lots of attention to my energy use every day, but they don't. And so what we found is that to make sure that they're delivering ongoing value, you have to constantly evidence the value of the service. So to your point around, do folks interact with us? We like to make sure these experiences show up in the device experience that you're already using. And so you'll hear occasionally, hey, here's how you're doing. Here's how you're tracking on savings. Here's the sort of broader impact. But we don't want to shout about it because people get a little tired of hearing about these things, but it needs to be there enough so that you see like, okay, this thing that I set up is working for me in the background. That's great. Maybe I'll adjust some settings, but for the most part, just glad that it's back there helping. I'm going to move on with my life now. That's sort of the extent of it. And then we like to think that over time, as you help people with these savings around the house, some of them will get a little bit more engaged over time. And then there'll be more ways that we can find to help them save, help them think about upgrades to the home and things like that over time that we can eventually get to. But really excited about the starting point, which is let's make it contextual, let's make it valuable, and let's find people in the right headspace.
Okay, so let me drill into that a little bit. Let's say most people are most familiar with a smart thermostat, Nest being, I presume, the leading brand. But I'm going to buy a smart thermostat. It's going to get installed. I know it's going to save me money. Gosh, I can't believe we don't even have one in my house yet. It drives me nuts now after talking about this every day. Whatever. But I know it's going to save me money just because it's going to control the energy better. But then Renew Home is a smarter intelligence inside that now says, we're also going to connect you into the grid and it's going to happen in the background. Maybe we'll tweak the temperature a little bit when you'll still be comfortable, but that will create some savings if we curtail your energy a little bit. Plus, we're going to do that with hundreds of thousands of other homes. And together, that is like a huge amount of load that's actually going to make the grid more stable and life's going to get better overall. So cool. Maybe I'm like super energy let's just say aficionado, I want to go deep on that. Sounds like we can meet you as deep as you want to go, Josh. Or if you're like, sounds great, I don't really want to pay any attention to it, but I like the concept. And if I save some money, awesome, let's set it up. So my question is, I'm going through this process and we're going to meet that customer right when they're setting up that thermostat. We're going to be like, we're part of this setup process. You're going through some prompts, turn us on. It's not some like, oh, I set this thing up, now I got to go download.
And then 2 months later, right.
Yeah. It's right in the moment. We get you right in the moment. Okay,
Yep.
So that makes sense to me. What are the types of features? If you said you can turn some on, turn some off, what does that mean?
I have an example that I really like in my house. So I'm in Northern California. A lot of us moved to time of use rates a couple of years ago. And so in the summertime, it starts June 1st over here, I think, my electricity rate will rise from 4 to 9 p.m. So it's peak window. And I'm in this space. I should take the time to think about that, understand it. Okay, I know the details of my rate and I can go and look at some of the devices around my house that have scheduling capabilities, and I'm going to set some schedules so that I use less from 4 to 9. It'd be great if I did that, but I have never done it. It's just one of those things that most people don't get around to. And also, it is the case that a lot of folks in our research didn't realize that transition happened. They actually thought they were on TOU rates the whole time. So we found years and years ago, before the transition, that most people in California thought they were on a time of use rate already. It wasn't the case, but now folks are. And so there was this continuation of existing behaviors. And so what you can do in California with these features is, as you're going through and setting up the thermostat, you can link your energy account and we can go see what your rate code is and see your peak period is 4 to 9. So you know what I'll do is find times throughout the day, especially in the summer, to help you save when your prices are most expensive. And should be pretty subtle. Don't think you're going to notice, but we're going to help you use less each day in that 5-hour window. Our current estimates are, and we think we can even do better over time, about 80 plus hours of cooling usage saved for a home like mine in the Valley area of California in those expensive windows. It's very cool and helpful. It's just turn this thing on. We'll keep an eye on that rate code for you, and then we'll find those savings. And then exactly to your point, if we can get millions of homes to do that, now you're actually also delivering helpful reduction of usage in that critical peak period in California. And then exactly to your point, there's system benefits then of it's actually just going to be cheaper to run this grid overall for everybody. So that's one example. Link that account, find that TOU rate. Another is earning rewards. We have a couple of different things, traditional demand response programs with utilities. We should talk about the phrasing of demand response too. And so ways that we can earn you rewards back from the grid. We have wholesale market programs that we participate in too, where we can help people earn rewards and just try to flow that through the experience of let's actually find ways not only to help you lower your cost, but see if we can earn you money back as well. And we can't do that one everywhere, but it's more common these days and increasingly so. And so we'll try to find more and more of those places where we can unlock those rewards for customers too.
And so when you're saying rewards, is that the concept of demand response? Is that where your technology comes in and is able to curtail a little bit what their energy use is and release that demand back to the grid? Are we talking virtual power plant type stuff now?
Yes, exactly. And I think I made a point when I was listening to the Jess Bergman show a couple of weeks ago to bring up some of the messaging here, because I think there's just such nice continuity that you all are running through on these podcasts, which is if you think about that term, demand response, compared to the word rewards. So we usually say rewards because people are like, yeah, sure. If I'm saving and it's helping the grid, that'd be great if I got rewarded for it. That makes sense to a lot of people. It's not for everybody, but it does make sense to people. So when I started in this space 15 years ago, we called it demand response. The history of that term, sort of logical. The demand side is all of us, our homes, our businesses, the industry, the sources of electricity demand rather than the supply of power. The idea was, well, what if the demand side could respond in times of need? We would call that demand response. Makes sense if you're in the space. When we did research on it, what we found was customers would react as like to the point we were talking about before. If instead of getting this invitation to contextual rewards feature, some random time throughout the year, I get invited to a demand response program, it sounds to me like my utility would like me to sign up for something where they will demand that I respond. I don't think that's for me. And we all took that for granted in the space for years. Of course, people understand that they're the demand. We're not demanding you. You're the demand. Don't you understand that? Like, well, no, they don't. And so as a result, people they ignore that kind of complexity. And so what we like to do is we'll deal with the industry complexity so that you don't have to, and we'll make it make more sense, and we'll make it easier, hopefully, along the way.
Okay. Thank you for that. I appreciate that explanation. I do like this evolution of industry veterans, let's say, like you and
Yeah.
Jess Bergman, who, yes, was on our show. And for our listeners, Jess was on our show. If you want to go find it with Mary Powell, the CEO of Sunrun, it was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, that was great.
And we're talking about productization, which really is about saying, okay, you're a new home, you're going to develop this really cool tech. You're going to develop this tech layer that's going to enable devices to run better in homes, connect into the grid, generate rewards for homeowners when necessary, free up energy for the grid when that needs more so they don't have to go fire up peaker plants. Awesome. That's all wonderful and the technology is amazing. But really what is most important is that homeowner engages with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that emphasis on we have to create a delightful, seamless experience to get this homeowner engaged with Renew Home, setting up on our services. So we're going to do it at the time of setup. We have to kind of change the language so that it feels more consumer, homeowner friendly and not like the utility is demanding response. Yeah, that just like started giving me anxiety as you were saying.
Totally. Yeah, it makes sense once you hear it.
I don't want that. I don't want anyone demanding my response. I'm not related to, at least. Tell me a little bit more about this personalization piece.
Mm-hmm.
What is it and what does that unlock?
I think it's critical. It unlocks the ability to really bring these features to scale. The way I think about it from a product development perspective is oftentimes the best features or the best products are the ones that feel completely obvious. That's how you know you've solved a problem. And maybe also your feature was pretty late because the reaction is, well, I thought it did this already. And so that's how you know, we nailed it and we probably should have done it sooner. That's what a lot of these personalization features end up doing for folks. And it's the reason that we can bring a lot of people into these savings features because it can take a look at your time of use rate and help, like the example we were talking about, and help you use less when prices are expensive. I've heard from customers like, well, I thought my thermostat already could do that. Like, well, no, it couldn't. And it took our engineers so long to figure out how to do this in a nice way, but I won't tell them that you thought it could already do that. So that's one. The second is for energy consumption, one of the single biggest drivers for lots of the loads in our home that are the biggest, it's weather. That's not the case for appliances and things, but for something like HVAC, occupancy and weather are the big drivers. And it varies a lot day to day. Your home's response to temperatures throughout the year based on the angle of the sun, and it's not like we're super complex about the angle of the sun, but we understand how the home heats up and cools down and loses heat and gains heat. That stuff matters a lot day to day. And there's lots of savings if you can find the deltas, but nobody could ever do that themselves. It's sort of silly to even think about trying to do it on your own. And so personalization of understanding your rate or understanding the local weather, understanding just generally the comings and goings of the house for auto scheduling, putting all of those pieces together means that the savings features when they run or the rewards shifts when they run can feel very comfortable for people and they can kind of fit into your day-to-day and your typical schedule, as opposed to feeling like this thing that's sort of bolted onto the experience. That's actually what demand response has historically felt like. It has historically been, oh, it's a demand response event. I demand that you respond. And it's this big temperature change and it can be pretty noticeable. So we're moving away from that to a world that's more personalized. Well, what if the savings and the shifts were going to unlock that cost savings for you, do it at the right time, and be pretty subtle? And so I think to answer your question, personalization is taking all of those inputs in and then being most helpful, letting the computers deal with the complexity of all those inputs, and then as a result, making it easy to participate.
Okay, that's helpful. Maybe this is a question about product development. Maybe it's roadmap. Your technology powers Google Nest. You mentioned Ream. They probably have a suite of products. So the one question would be like, what are you doing with Ream? And then it sounds like there's more coming. There's more partnerships to be had. You want to integrate your technology into more devices that are going to go into a home. So how are you all thinking about that product roadmap for your expansion?
I love the question because I think we have a slightly different perspective on this space than some others. I have been I have been told that I like to prioritize dusty projects because the stuff I like to work on tends to be in garages. I've learned as a California kid that actually also means basements in other parts of the US. But it tends to be the dusty things that matter the most. And so to get to your question, the way we work with Rheem as an example is with smarter hot water heaters that can shift load around, actually doing similar things of inviting customers in a contextual way to enroll those devices in a rewards program to earn money back for the water heater. In a lot of ways, water heating is actually an even better way to shift load around because if done right, not really even something that you could detect. It's like you have this sort of unused thermal battery in the dusty garage or in the dusty basement. A little harder to get in front of customers because we don't tend to interact with our water heaters as much as other smart devices, but there's lots of great innovation going there to make it more common for people to do so. And that's going to, I think, lead to some really great progress here. But to answer your question around the way we think about the future, we're really focused on the devices that drive the biggest cost for people and have the most potential to benefit, kind of the way we like to say it, is the world around us. And so it's tempting to skip the dusty stuff, go to some of the more fun, kind of cooler new technologies in the energy space. But we're really excited about so much capacity still exists for savings, for helping people with HVAC. So you mentioned we don't have a Nest. It doesn't have to be a Nest, just a smart thermostat that's connected into these programs is what we're going for. There's still so much to be done just getting people into that technology. So we're excited about expanding and doing more with HVAC. Water heating is a really important one because it's such a big driver of bills depending on the type of device that you have and the rate that you're on. And then over time, obviously, we haven't announced anything yet, but always excited to talk to folks that are working on that next wave of technologies in the home, whether I'm charging a car at home, I'm using a battery for backup, or it's connected to a smart inverter and a solar panel. There's a lot coming there. What we try to remind folks is let's not forget about all the stuff that exists already, because that actually tends to drive most people's bills today.
Yeah, I would think that would also be really impacted by the types of customers you're trying to acquire. Because if you were trying to acquire someone who's, I don't know, maybe this is a catch-22 conundrum, I don't know, call it what you will, but if you were like, hey, Josh, like just get a smart thermostat, you're going to love it, and hook it up to our Renew Home virtual power plan, or you'll start earning rewards back from the grid, like awesome. And take a look at your water heater. You already have that in the house. You
Right.
might as well hook it up too. And you know that thing's using, like, I'm a homeowner. Yeah, I know. Most people don't have batteries in their houses. The great majority of Americans aren't going to have them for a very long time.
Right.
It's all speeding up, but it's
Right.
still such early days. So the language you're speaking is language that I can comprehend. But the early adopter is probably that person who already has the batteries. So how do you think about this customer acquisition with your value proposition, what you want to accomplish, and finding those customers who are aligned with what you want them to be doing?
So you're right. But the good news is those early adopters were also the early adopters of the first smart thermostats, the first smart water heaters. Now they're the early adopters of the batteries in the cars. So it tends to actually line up pretty well. It's true that we all have, for the most part, depending on where you live, not always the case, but most of us have HVAC systems. And then everybody certainly has hot water heating. Fewer people have cars and batteries. But even in those first dusty categories, the early adopters of the next wave tend to line up with the early adopters of the batteries in the cars.
You mentioned it before. You don't want to be in people's faces with like, hey, you're saving money, ding, ding,
Right.
ding, or probably alerts on your phone. But how do you think about the ongoing engagement with your customers? So let's just say I start with a smart thermostat, whether it's a Nest or something else. Renew's technology is inside of it. I'm on your rewards program. Maybe I want to go set something else up right away. How do you stay enough front of mind, enough attention that you can keep pinging people at appropriate times to get them putting more and more devices onto Renew Rewards or the virtual power plant that you all are?
Yeah. This is, I think, one of the harder problems in this space because it tends to be where we do not focus tons of time traditionally on product experiences from the folks who came out of a lot of consumer hardware. It's a little bit of a pull, which is nice. And so all of us who came from the Nest Services business, the Ohm Connect folks and the O-Power folks, I think understand this piece. And so we're able to laser focus. I'll get to the answer. The logic being, it's common in consumer hardware historically before devices were connected to focus on getting that purchase, getting people to take the device home from the electronics store and get it set up. And then you sort of have lost touch with them. That's it. Like, I hope they enjoy it. Maybe they call you for customer support, but that's about it. Now, exactly to your point, we have the ability to engage people on an ongoing basis. And so then the temptation is, Well, our stuff is very cool. We should talk to them daily. Why don't we give them a daily update on their savings? So the temptation is to swing too far to the other side of the pendulum and over communicate. And what we have found is there are a couple of things in the ongoing, what we call evidencing of value along the full life cycle. There's a couple things for the stuff we work on that seem to really help. A monthly cadence of keeping people up to date is, I would say, a good start. It's maybe a little too much for a lot of people. Quarterly, when it comes to energy, probably about right. But the other thing that's very nice about energy in the home is it can be very evocative seasonally, because we tend to actually think about it a little bit as the seasons change. Like, oh, we're going into the summer season. Should we get the air conditioner tuned up? Do we need to change the filter? There are these moments when people naturally think about this stuff. And so if you can be helpful in that moment, that tends to be a nice way to present yourself and talk to people. So I would say, I don't think we've cracked it. We have a good start. There's a constant need to not over communicate. And then the balance of making sure you don't under communicate to make people think, well, I guess this isn't helping me anymore. I haven't heard from it in a long time. That can be really challenging. The other challenge in this space is that it's across time and it's across surfaces. And so you don't know when they're going to check the stuff that you're sending. And you don't know on which device they will check the things that you're sending. And you don't know if they ever will check the things that you're sending. So you have to understand that and try to pick your spots in a thoughtful and helpful way. It truly is constant refinement.
You cannot demand their response.
You cannot. No, try all you want. You can't.
I like what you said too. I mean, tracing back to your roots in energy efficiency continue to surface when you say things like energy can be really evocative.
Right.
That's right. You don't hear that type of phrasing very often from people. So I appreciate the passion that's behind it.
Yeah, thank you.
One of the things that I've started to wonder about, and like you mentioned, Jeff, we talked to Jess Bergman and Mary Powell, and they were talking about like, how do you create this world-class experience, this product experience? And it sounds like you're very attuned to that conversation as well. Sunrun's working on virtual power plants. We've talked to GoodLeap that does solar financing, and they're building their own kind of services on top of financing. Palmetto's going to come on the show. We've got Johnson Controls. Now they're looking at commercial buildings. That's a little different. Schneider Electric. So we're getting this kind of full landscape. But within the home, how do you begin to think about a future as virtual power plants, as this technology increasingly spreads? I know you've announced big plans with NRG and Vivint down in Texas to build a gigawatt virtual power plant. It's incredibly exciting, trying to enroll a couple 100,000 people in that. Invariably, there's crossover with someone who's got solar from Sunrun, right? Or they GoodLeap finance their solar, and they have a point of view on their own virtual power plant. What does this start to mean for a homeowner when all these companies are working in the same home, maybe providing different parts of this service?
Yeah, it's a question I think about a lot, and certain pockets of our team spend a lot of time on. Our theory of the case here is that the sort of fractured nature of the day-to-day that you described is probably always going to be the case. And we should just embrace that as an industry. I would say maybe 5 to 10 years ago, I think a lot of us had this hope that people would so desire energy management at home that there would come a time where they would go pick a tool to use. And then there'd be any number of things available, but you'd think, okay, I'm going to today set up my home energy management, and which of these products will I choose? I think the reality is most people, some early adopters will, but most people won't ever arrive at that point. They will instead manage energy at the points that matter to them. Ideally, some of it is coordinated in singular experiences just to make it easy for folks. But I think the ethos of meeting people where they are needs to mean that we should just show up in the right surface at the right time for the right customer. And so our preference is that you could find helpful insight or features from Renew Home in any number of those apps or services that you're using. And so our preference would just be to work with everybody so that if there's one app that you use every day for most of this stuff, cool. Let's make sure that you can see your savings over there. You can check your impact and turn on more features over there. If you prefer to manage things through a particular web portal from a company that you have maybe a billing relationship with, cool. Let's make sure that those relevant things are over there so that it just shows up in contextually relevant ways. That's our hope, rather than saying, let's try to make people care so much about home energy management that they pick a new tool. I think it's just unrealistic.
I was really wondering about that. And for some reason, when I start thinking about it now, I think about Apple's campus. They built this beautiful modern building and it's gorgeous and it reflects the Apple ecosystem, which is enclosed unto itself. Like Apple's awesome, but it's its own thing and you got to play by Apple's rules to get in it. And meanwhile, you have these really exciting companies like what you all are doing, like some of the other companies that are spinning up and thinking about virtual power plants. There's so much opportunity ahead for everyone. And the last thing you want is to get tripped up because people haven't quite figured out how this is all going to work, right? Because the customer is going to say, unless someone's showing me just a way better user experience, and I'm like, I just love this. You have to figure out, solar provider, how you map into Renew Home because I use this. You know?
Right.
And maybe that's part of the thinking. I don't know. But we had Molly Wood on the show.
Oh, yeah. She's great.
And great, right? Her Climate Solutions podcast, Everybody in the Pool, longtime marketplace tech reporter and just wonderful journalist. And we were talking about it. And she's like, just stick with me for a second. Maybe this makes sense, maybe it doesn't. But I wonder if what's still missing from this conversation around home energy management and virtual power plants, does there need to be an enabling layer like a plaid that somehow enables a lot of communication to take place in the back that makes everything seamless? I'm putting it to you now, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if that triggers anything for you as we're having this conversation.
Yeah. So first of all, love Molly's work. I have followed what she's been doing for years and years. Actually, that podcast is in my list in Spotify. So I'll still get to that one. I think something has changed over the last few years. It was the case when we started Rush Hour Rewards, demand response for Nest thermostat customers. We were in an era then when we were talking to energy partners of ours that for the most part, we needed to convince them, this is something that you should try. We should turn on a cool smart thermostat demand response program. And it was more convincing people to hopefully arrive at the conclusion that we had arrived at, that was this should be good for customers and the grid. The thing that has changed is we don't have to do any convincing anymore. There's such a need for support for the cleaner, more dynamic grid that is being built all around us that exactly to your point, there's so much opportunity. There's opportunity for everybody in this space. It's a little bit more of a pull like, hey, how much more help can we get in terms of new solutions for this era that we're in? And so to get to your point on the plaid thing, I think it's a great example. The one difference that, because it's come up before, the one difference that I would throw out is I think that we will never truly get people to care as much about home energy management as they do about other things, to the point where they will pull new solutions in, like we were talking about before, and go find that sort of singular experience. And so exactly to Molly's point, if there are ways that the right features and the right insights and the right things can just be present where you land, I think that would be fabulous. Is it exactly like plaid? I'm not sure, because people do really like financial products. And so it's like, I want to make sure I'm investing for college. And so I actually need to go find something for that. And okay, now I need this plaid solution. Whereas energy is a slightly different approach. So I think it's a good analogy. And I guess to my point earlier on, something has changed and there's so much more need in the space for this. I don't think it'll be just one provider. I think there will be many, many ways that these features start to come to life. One more thing and then I'll pause. One of my favorite job interview questions is, tell me something about this space that you believe is true that other people don't believe is true. I heard it on a podcast once. I just love seeing people's reactions to that. And my answer to that question is, I think that in 10 years from now, so I've been saying that for about 5 years. So like 5 years from now, I think our devices will do these things for us as a matter of course. We will expect them to do it. And we will be kind of annoyed when we buy something that doesn't do this smart energy stuff. It'll be so expected that we will just expect it to run and then move on with our lives. And that's the future of home energy management. It better be doing that thing that I bought it to do. And it should tell me about what it's doing every once in a while. And then I'm kind of done with it. So anyway, those are a few of the pieces that I think plug into that.
Well, one, I love that answer, because what it reminds me of is I worked for a really dumb company during the dot-com bubble crash. The concept wasn't dumb, but like whatever. It was just, I mean, the concept was
tough
great.
timing.
Before YouTube, it was going to be the TV guide for the internet. And it was like, oh, guess what? Like we got it. We don't need that.
Yeah.
There's YouTube. But you had this moment when you're looking at all these technologies. So this goes back like 25 years ago. And it's like all so interesting. And it's like, this company's building a big business and this company's building a business. And it's like so incredible. And nobody cares. No consumer cares at all,
Right.
Yet all this stuff is going to impact everybody's life one day. It's just all happening in the guts, in
Right.
the background, right? To your point of there will come a moment, and I think you're right. So you have 5 years now to see if your prediction
Right.
bears out, where people are just like, yeah, of course this thing is connected to the grid, and of course it's earning me rewards, whatever.
Right.
The piece that I didn't ask you, and you did touch on, because I mentioned you're going to be rolling out this virtual power plant with NRG, huge utility partner. Google Cloud is involved in that. Sounds like a lot of the AI intelligence, like let's understand what the weather is going to be. Let's predict how much clean energy and renewables are going to be on the grid. And let's tie in our smart devices into maybe running more when there's more renewables, like awesome stuff.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the partnerships you have to go build on that side, and it's never easy, but it sounds like those doors have swung far more open now for you than they would have in years past for Renew to go and build those relationships with the utilities, with the energy providers.
Yeah, they definitely have. And I think it's what makes it an exciting time. And it's the reason that I think there will be so much happening here in the next 5 years that we will look back and think, we were just at the beginning at that point. I thought we were at the beginning in 2009 when I started in the space. I was wrong. I think now is probably the beginning. For that reason, the energy providers that we talk to are really focused on these solutions. They've now got about 10 years of experience running these types of programs for customers. And so whereas before we were all building a new muscle together, now they feel like, okay, I understand it. I can get my arms around how this works. I know what it takes to communicate with folks. I'm excited about finding people in the device experiences themselves as opposed to trying to market months later after they've set it up. And because there's so much need for solutions for the grid, it's like, I know how this works. I know we can do more and we need it. So let's talk. And that's exciting for consumers too, because energy, even though we don't go seek out what is my home energy management solution necessarily, energy is getting more complicated at home. And so the one addendum I would say to my point around seeking out home energy management, I don't think people will necessarily think, that's what I need is home energy management, but they will be looking for savings and they will be looking for more control because bills are going up. We're plugging cars in at home now. We're thinking about backup power because we have more outages. And so I don't know that people will think about it as, that means I've arrived at a point where I need home energy management, but they have arrived at this point for needing that extra control. So you put those two things together, the energy providers being ready to deliver new solutions and consumers being more eager to find that control and those savings. That's a nice pairing. And so the reason I'm excited about it is it wasn't like that 10 years ago. People weren't thinking about it and energy providers weren't ready for it quite yet, but those things have changed.
That's very helpful perspective. That definitely reflects a lot of the conversation we had, but consumers want the outcomes. They want savings and they want control. They don't necessarily want like a whole bunch of more technology in their house. Some do, most don't. Right?
Some,
they want these out, right? And the energy providers, they need this ability to access this freed up demand, so to speak, or this energy to stabilize the grid, to be able to operate. Yeah, that's very helpful to understand. How do you guys make money?
It's a business model that has been running now for a while, and it's part of what we started with Rush Hour Rewards with Nest, which is energy providers who are managing the grid or system operators who are managing the grid. If you need help in the peak window, that's valuable to an energy provider. And so if we can pair the two things of help a customer save, help them earn a reward for shifting usage out of a peak window, if we can do that for consumers, then there's value in that to the energy providers. And that's then why it all works out as these features can just be part of the day-to-day experience.
And so your client in this case, is that the energy provider? Is that who's paying you?
Yeah, we like to think of it as it's not necessarily a two-sided marketplace, but it is a two-sided business model to the extent that none of this works if we don't bring value to customers. And so it all starts there. So there's a whole team focused on bring value to customers, find them more rewards, unlock more rewards programs throughout the US, find more interesting ways to help them save, like this time of use rate automation. And then, like we talked about before, find other devices that we can help them with over time to save. And then exactly to your point, if then energy providers can provide inputs into that platform of like, hey, the grid needs help this time. If we can start to match up the savings and the reward shifts with what the grid needs, then yeah, we have partners on the energy provider side and then effectively partnerships with customers to help them save. And our sort of special sauce is making sure that everybody wins in that connection. And then along with the weather forecast and the leakiness of homes and all that stuff.
Got it. So effectively, you're sharing in those savings.
Exactly.
Okay. I asked that question in a way that drives me. You know who asks questions like that, that way? My dad. You know, I'll have
nice.
I got this great business, whatever. Da, 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 da. They'd be like, how do you make money?
Yeah.
We'll get to that. No. So listeners do need to know. Yeah.
This industry exists and has for so long because I think part of the benefit that we're bringing to folks is these opportunities to save and get these rewards back from the grid have been around for a long time, decades. And people should take more advantage of them. And it's hard to find them and it's hard to understand them when you do find them. And so part of our job in the partnerships with the utility side is let's unlock this and then let's bring it to consumers so that they can find it and get that value. Because otherwise, if we're not here, they're going to miss out.
Absolutely. I think that sums it up, I guess, is what I would say. I mean,
yeah.
So one, we went deeper into virtual power plants than we have to date. You were absolutely the right guest to walk us through it and do that with us. Thank you for that. I'm very excited about your business. I'm very excited about Renew Home. You've got some wonderful partnerships on the horizon. So we're going to follow it as you continue to progress and scale this up.
Thank you. And likewise, I'll keep listening. And thanks for having me and for having us.